The market for lemons is the most academically famous example of adverse selection. So what is adverse selection? That's when asymmetric information causes a market to select only for the lowest quality participants. Let's go through a few other famous examples of adverse selection. First, let's start with health insurance. In fact, back in 2009, when Obamacare was first being proposed, it was actually not uncommon to see the phrase adverse selection pop up in relatively mainstream media. So why is that? What does health insurance have to do with adverse selection? So here we're talking about a market where the goods for sale are health insurance policies. So the sellers of those goods, that would be the health insurance companies, and the buyers of those goods would be individuals who are buying a health insurance plan. The value to the buyer, how much do you value a health insurance policy? Well, it's the amount of money it's going to save you. Same thing for the cost for the seller. So for the health insurance provider, the cost to them of providing that good is what they're going to expect to pay out. Now, where's the asymmetric information come from? Well, what really matters is how healthy is a given individual. That determines in expectation how much money is going to need to be paid later from the insurance company to the individual. And who knows more about their health, the buyers here or the sellers, the individuals or the health insurance companies? Well, this is probably changing a little bit over time as our society gets more and more data-driven, but certainly historically, individuals would often know quite a bit more about their own health than what would be available and usable by the insurance companies. So this is a flip from the market for lemons. Market for lemons, remember, it was the sellers who had more information. In this market, we're thinking about the buyers as having more information about the cost of that good to the supplier. So where does adverse selection come in? So like in market for lemons, let's make sort of an extreme assumption. Let's assume that the health insurance companies, in fact, cannot differentiate between different individuals at all. Suppose all the individuals seem exactly the same to them, and so they're going to wind up offering everybody the same policy at some common price. Okay, so that means now the health insurance companies are offering a policy at whatever price they're offering at, $5,000 a year or whatever. Who's going to actually want to pay for that health insurance policy? Well, if you're expecting to get more than $5,000 of reimbursements over the year, then it's going to be worth it to you. If you're expecting to get less than $5,000 of payments over the course of the year, it's not worth it to you, and you won't necessarily buy the policy. So in other words, if say 50% of the people took up the insurance company's offer of the policy at a given price, that to first order is going to be the least healthy 50% of the population. The least healthy individuals are the ones for which a health insurance policy is the most valuable. But now, of course, the insurance company sort of realizes this. They're like, well, we can't differentiate people, but we know some are healthier than others, and we know whatever price we offer, we're going to be getting the least healthy batch. So that means we need to revise our price upward to make sure we're covering our costs, even for just the least unhealthy, say 50% of the population. But then, of course, once the policies have a higher price, that's going to force still more individuals out of the health insurance market. Of those top 50%, least unhealthy people, the most healthy amongst them will be the first to leave if health insurance premiums go up. So taken to the extreme, sort of the doomsday scenario here, is you wind up with a health insurance company, a health insurance market, where the only patients are extremely sick people and the insurance policies are extremely expensive. And in fact, one of the points of universal health care is exactly to mitigate this adverse selection issue. So if everybody has health insurance, including all of the healthy people, then you can offer health insurance policies at a much more reasonable rate. In effect, because the healthy people on average are subsidizing their less fortunate, less healthy fellow citizens. Another famous example is the labor market. So here, the buyers correspond to firms, the sellers correspond to workers, and they're also the goods. So one can imagine that, some of these sellers, some of the workers are better, meaning more productive than others, and accordingly, they would be more valuable to a firm, just like a good car would be more valuable to the buyer of a car. And like in the market for lemons, here the sellers, meaning the workers, they're typically going to be better informed about the value of the goods that they offer, i.e. better informed about their own productivity and the firms will not be able to directly assess that before hiring. And again, just if you think about the extreme case, that would mean a firm literally cannot distinguish different workers at all, in which case it's going to be paying all of them some kind of common wage, a wage that's not dependent on the productivity level. So in that case, that can lead to the exit of the most productive workers, because they might be able to make more money than the common wage by staying self-employed. And then if the most productive workers exit the market, then of course firms are willing to pay only less. That depresses the wages further, which leads to the exit of more workers, the most productive of the ones who had previously remained, and so on. And again, sort of the doomsday scenario, if you take this to the logical conclusion, would be sort of a market where you only have low productivity workers all earning some kind of minimum wage. For an example that's a little more kind of in the running theme of this short course, thinking about technology platforms that we use every day, let's think about the market for online advertising. Like, for example, for the sponsored links, which are shown on the results page of a search engine. Okay, so how does this market work? Who are the buyers? Who are the sellers? What are the goods, etc.? Well, so what's being sold are basically clicks. Okay, so the sellers are advertisers. They have some landing page that they want you to look at. So that's what they're selling. Buyers, those are the people who can click on these sponsored links. So those are going to just be users of the search engine. The search engine itself is just a platform that facilitates the transaction and extracts a transaction fee for matching the seller with a buyer who clicks on the link. So the buyers are users and the sellers are the advertisers. Now, here again, there's going to be asymmetric information, potentially. Right, so for the goods being sold, basically sort of views of landing pages, quite possible that the sellers, right, those would be like the owners of the landing pages in many cases, the sellers are going to know a lot more about the quality of what they're selling, about the quality of their landing page, like they're going to know whether they're a spammer or not, whereas the buyer, just some user looking at a bunch of different sponsored links, may not be able to differentiate between the links going to spam pages and those that go to high quality pages. And so here again, if there is asymmetric info, okay, if the buyer can't distinguish which ads are likely to be good and which ads are likely to be bad, the buyer will make decisions on whether or not to click on these sponsored links just based on the average ad quality, right? Because that's all they have to go by. If they can't differentiate the ads and the search engine doesn't bother to do it for them, then they're just going to basically get a random ad when they click on a link. So that means if the average ad is not very high quality, it means a user is not going to be very likely to click on some random link. And then, if you're not getting many clicks, then the high quality ads, they're going to say, forget this. We can get a much better return on investment from some other platform, and they're just going to leave. And so that leads to a further depression of the average ad quality, making users still less likely to click on those ads, and so on. The result ultimately being a market where all you've got is pure clickbait being submitted by the sellers, and then the users correspondingly almost never clicking on those very low quality ads. And in fact, it's actually tempting to speculate that something similar was going on at Yahoo, maybe 5 years ago or so, when search ad revenue had dropped for 2 consecutive years, even as it increased for all other major search engines. Some experts were speculating that Yahoo was in fact promoting more clickbaity type ads to boost their short-term revenue, which then ultimately led to lower participation and lower revenue in the long run. And this touches on sort of a more general point, which I want to make, which is don't ever forget that when you're managing a system where you have autonomous users, where users can choose to use it or not, can choose to use it in different ways, whenever you change the system, whenever you tweak the rules, like whether or not you promote high quality ads or not, whenever you change the system, that's also going to change how the users behave in that system. They will react to the changes that you make. So while you might wish that as you play around with your platform and try different features, you might wish that user behavior would remain fixed, because it would be much easier to reason about the consequences of your changes, but it won't. For example, it may be tempting to promote clickbait to increase clicks and hence revenue in the short term, but disappointed users will quickly adjust and click less often on those ads in the future.